Vaishnava Takura Doyara Sagara Edase Karuna Kori Oh hey Vaishnava Takura Doyara Sagara Edase Karuna Kori Diya Parachaya Shoro He Amai Tumara Charanga Kori Chaya Bhika Domi Chaya Tosha Shoji Chaya Guna Devotase Chaya Satsanga Deho He Amare Bosachi Sangera Ekaki Amma Nahi Pai Balo Harinama Sankirtane Tumi Kripa Kore Shraddha Bindu Diya Deho Krishna Nama Dhane Krishna se toma, Krishna jite paro, tomara shakti ache. Krishna se toma, Krishna jite paro, tomara shakti ache. Amito Ganga, Krishna Krishna Boli, Dayatava Pache Pache. Oh hey Vaishnava Thakura, Doyara Sagara, Edase Karuna Kori. Oh hey Vaishnava Thakur, Jai Vaishnava Thakur, Vaishnava Thakur, Jai Vaishnava Thakur. Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jai Prabhupada. Ujjvala Ujjvala Varana Gauravara Deham Vilasita Niravari Bhava Videham Ujjvala Varana Gauravara Deham Vilasita Niravari Bhava Videham Tribhuvana Pavan Tribhuvana Pavana. Why can't you start from the beginning? Ujjvala. Ura. Nivasita Niravadi Bhava Videham. Tribhuvana Pavana Kripayalesham Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam. Gadgaram Karababa Vikaram Durjana Tarjana Nada Vishalam. Bhavaya Bhajana Karana Karunam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam. Arunam Bharadara Charu Kapolam Indu Vindindita Nakachairuchiram. Jalpita Nijaguna Nama Vinodam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam. Digalita Nayana Kamala Jalatharam Bhushana Navarasa Baba Vikaram. Gati Yati Mantara Nritya Vilasam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam. Chanchalu Charu Charana Gati Ruchiram Manjira Ranjita Pada Juga Madhuram. Chandra Vindita Shitala-varanam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam. Yutakati Dora Kamandaludam Divyakalevara Mundita Mundam. Durjana Kalmasha Khandana Dandam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam. Bhushana Bhurajala Kavalitam Indita Vandara Bhararishiram. Malaya Javira Chitta Ujjvala Tilakam Tam Pranamami Cha Shri Sachitanayam. Nindittaruna Kalagavanayanam Ajamulam Ditta Shri Bhujadigalam. Kalevara Kaishora Nartaka Desham Shambrana Manicha Shri Sachitanayam. Bolo Hari Hari Mukunda Murari Rama Krishna Haya Griva. Nrsimha Vamana Shri Madhusudana Rajendra Nandana Shyama. Bhutana Gatana Kaitava Shatana Jaya Shakti Rama. Yashoda Dulala Govinda Gopala Vrindavana Purandara. Gopi Priya Jana Radhika Ramana Bhuvana Sundara Bora. Davanatha Kara Makanatha Skara Gopi Jana Vastrahari. Prajera Rakala Gopa Vrindapala Chitta Hari Vanshita. Yogindra Bandana Shinandanandana Prachajana Baya Hari Navina Nirara Rupa Manohara Mohana Bam Shivihari Navina Nirara Rupa Manohara Mohana Bam Shivihari Yashodanandana Hamsa Nisudana Nikunjara Savilase Kadambakana Rasaparayana Vrindavipina Nivasi Anandavardana Premaniketana Kulashara Jojakama Gopanga Mangana Chitta Vinodana Samasta Guna Gana Dama Jamuna Jivana Keli Parayana Manasa Chandra Chakora Krishna Dasha Rako Bachana Manamora Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Kirtan Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Sai Gaur Hari Bol
Hare Krishna. Hamare jivana sada papirata nahi ko punye ralisha
just do a small part of the Brahma Samhita. Shvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam Chintamani Prapadasatma Sukalpa Vriksha Akshavriteshu Surabhira Vipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasra Shatasambrama Sevamana Govindamari Purusham Maham Bhajami Venum Kvanantam Aravindam Dalayatasham Vardhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kala Sarvana Valyavanshi Radham Gadam Pranaya Keli Kala Vilasham Shabam Tribangavalitam Niyata Prakasham Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ahangani Yasya Sakalindriya Prittivanti Pashanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Saduchvala Vigrahasya Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Sha Vedeshu Dulam Mahabhakta Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Shakavatsara Samprakamyo Ayoradhapi Manaso Muripundavana Sobhyastya Praparasinya Vichinta Tattve Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Eko Vyasaura Chatitam Jagadam Rakoti Yashakti Rasi Jagadanda Chayayananta Anantarasta Paraman Chayantarastam Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Adhikadavi Kadiyo Manujastataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Shayanara Bhusha Suttayaneva Nigamapatitaistu Bhanti Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavithabis Tabirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalavi Goloka Eva Nivasahya Vilapahuto Govindamari Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Tulsi, could you lead the Jai Radha Madhava, please? You play harmonium. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nashtapraeshu Padreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyutama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishiki Tada Rajastamo Bhava Kamaloba Dayaschaye Chaitay Anavidam Stitam Sattve Prasidati Evam Prasanna Manaso Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha Bhagavat Tattva Vijnanam Mukta Sangasya Jayate Vitate Hridaya Grantish Chitante Sarva Samshaya Shiyante Tasya Karmani Trishte Vatmanishvare Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. You know, there's a problem when you mark every page. Then you have to look at them. We're reading from the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi 4, text number 56. Radha Krishna Eko Atma Dui Deha Dari Anyonye Vilase Rasa Asvadhana Kari Vilase Rasa. It's beautiful, isn't it? Radha Krishna. Radha and Krishna. Ek. One. Atma. Self. Dui. Two. Deha. Bodies. Dhari. Assuming. So we have Radha Krishna Ak Atma Dui Deha Dhari, which just means Radha and Krishna are one, but they've assumed two bodies. Anyonye, one another. Vilase, they enjoy. Rasa, the mellows of love. Asvadana Kari, tasting. Anyonye Vilase Rasa Asvadana Kari. Thus, they enjoy each other tasting the mellows of love. The second. Thus, they enjoy each other tasting the mellows of love. Purport: the two transcendentalists, Radha and Krishna, are a puzzle to materialists. The above description of Radha and Krishna from the diary of Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami is a condensed explanation, but one needs great spiritual insight to understand the mystery of these two personalities. So, referring back to the previous verse, it's the one everyone knows, Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Ladini Shaktir Asmad. And it's from Swarup Damodar's diary. He writes, the loving affairs of Sri Radha and Krishna are transcendental manifestations of the Lord's internal pleasure-giving potency. Although Radha and Krishna are one in their identity, they separated themselves eternally. Now these two transcendental identities have again united in the form of Sri Krishna Chaitanya. I bow down to him who has manifested himself as the sentiment, with the sentiment and complexion of Srimati Radharani, although he is Krishna himself. So, continuing the purport, one is enjoying in two. Sri Krishna is the potent factor and Srimati Radharani is the internal potency. According to Vedanta philosophy, there is no difference between the potent and the potency. They are identical. We cannot differentiate between one and the other any more than we can separate fire from heat. Everything in the absolute is inconceivable in relative existence. Therefore, in relative cognizance, it is very difficult to assimilate this truth of the oneness between the potent and the potency. Relative cognizance. The philosophy of inconceivable oneness and difference propounded by Lord Chaitanya is the only source of understanding for such intricacies of transcendence. In fact, the Radharani is the internal potency of Sri Krishna, and she eternally intensifies the pleasure of Sri Krishna. Impersonalists cannot understand this without the help of a Mahabhagavata devotee. The very name Radha suggests that Srimati Radharani is eternally the topmost mistress of the comforts of Sri Krishna. As such, she is the medium transmitting the living entity's service to Sri Krishna. Haribol. Devotees in Vrindavan therefore seek the mercy of Srimati Radharani in order to be recognized as loving servitors of Sri Krishna. Radhe Radhe. Although I was leaving once when I was on the plane and I was texting everyone, Radhe Radhe, and somehow Malati saw it and she wrote back, she said, Prabhupada, they say Radhe Radhe, we say Hare Krishna. I was like, all right, Hare Krishna. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu personally approaches the fallen conditioned souls of the Iron Age to deliver the highest principle of transcendental relationships with the Lord. The activities of Lord Chaitanya are primarily in the role of the pleasure-giving portion of his internal potency. The absolute personality of Godhead Sri Krishna is the omnipotent form of transcendental existence, knowledge, and bliss in full. His internal potency is exhibited first as Sat, or existence, or, in other words, as the portion that expands the existence function of the Lord. When the same potency displays full knowledge, it is called Chit, or Sambit, which expands the transcendental forms of the Lord. Finally, when the same potency plays as the pleasure-giving medium, it is known as Hladini. Hladini, or the transcendental blissful potency. Thus, the Lord manifests his internal potency in three transcendental divisions. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So great yogis and tapasvis give up the whole material world just to try to taste a drop of Brahman happiness. Rupa Goswami explains that there are 3 standards of happiness. One is so-called material happiness, which is fraught with trouble. The reactions that one gets after enjoying, if one does indeed get to enjoy, are so onerous that it makes it not worth it. And above that, after somebody figures that colossal hoax out for him or herself, one may aspire for Brahman happiness instead of contact between the senses and their objects, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yehi samsparshaja bhoga tukayonaya evate adyantavanta kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. Person who becomes intelligent or is intelligent doesn't aspire for contact between senses and their objects in order to get sparsha pleasure, because he knows that they're the womb of misery. In other words, out of that is born unhappiness, because there's a beginning and an end. Note to self, follow this instruction. And then a person, as Prabhupada points out here, with relative cognizance, which means that using one's own intellect to understand what to do next, one may speculate that I'll therefore rise above material nature by renouncing it. And this leaves one in an imbalanced situation. Yene ravindaksha pamuktavaninas tvayasta bhavad avashuddha buddhaya. This is avashuddha buddhaya, means that the intelligence is not clear. It's a polluted. And therefore, because one doesn't have Krishna consciousness, but has polluted consciousness, aruya krishchena, even though one works very hard to get free from the material conditions of life through some kind of austerities, or whatever it may be. Prabhupada mentions in his purport to that verse that people try for some kind of platform above material miseries in many different ways. Aruya krishchena param padam tata, even after all such austerities are performed, patantyado, one falls back down again. However, yet pada pankacha vilasa vilasya bhakta karmashrayam gratitam udkartayanti santa tadvanna riktamatayo yatayo pirudha shroto ganas tamaranam vajavasudevam. If one is able to taste the happiness that comes from the pastimes of Krishna, and hearing about him, his lotus feet are so sweet, tips of the toes of his feet are sought after by the great yogis, but those who are bhakti yogis actually get a taste for that. And as I've mentioned before, when I came to Krishna consciousness, I was a hapless soul, thinking I was some kind of yogi by renouncing the material world. And when I came into the ashram, somehow they let me in, and I would look at the altar and then mostly look at the flowers, because I was so used to seeing God everywhere. And I wasn't really sure what the deities were, had no training or conception, I hadn't heard about it. And also, I could really relate to Bhagavad Gita, but not to the Srimad Bhagavatam. I read the Gita again and again, but then I'd look at Srimad Bhagavatam and think, well, what are all these stories? Who are all these people? Because the impersonal conception is so much inculcated, and one who's interested in spiritual life, which I was, and every investigation I did ended in some kind of relative cognitive process through which I was told that, renounce the material world, try to taste Brahman happiness and so forth, see God everywhere. But then, by sitting in Srimad Bhagavatam class, as we just heard, Nashta Prayushu Bhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Prabhupada arranged it so you hear every day. And even a hapless soul who happens into one of these circumstances where you're in the association of pure devotees, and then you hear again and again. And I can remember the moment when I was in the San Francisco temple, light was pouring through the beautiful skylight into that nice room that used to be where all the caskets were to show the dead bodies. So it was very ornate and beautiful. We took over a funeral parlor to make it into a temple. And Tulsi was there, the devotees were there, the floor was pure white, and there were some flower petals from carnations mostly we had here, there, and everywhere on the floor. And I was carried away by the environment. And then Bhutatma Prabhu, recently passed away, my dear godbrother, he was reading from the Bhagavatam about the queens of Dwarka and how they could not quit those lotus feet. The phraseology of that, somehow it caught my ear. And I started thinking, oh, Krishna has lotus feet. And they couldn't quit them. And there was some kind of stirring in my heart that, wow, this is beautiful. So what Prabhupada talks about here is the way in which this is not from relative cognizance, but as association with Uttama Bhaktas, or those who are following the Uttama Bhakta strictly, will have the same potency. And therefore, sitting in their assembly, then suddenly I felt like, wow, there's Krishna, and there he has lotus feet. So, yat pada pankacha vilasya vilasya bhakta. If you can hear about Krishna and get a tiny taste from the association of devotees, then it says, Shroto ganas tam aranam bhaja vasudevam. You can be the one that can untie the knot of material attachment. It says, Yat pada pankacha palasya vilasya bhakta karmashrayam gratitam. There's a karmashrayam. There's such a convoluted knot, a knot upon a knot and upon a knot. It's impossible to open it. But by hearing about the transcendental pastimes of Radha and Krishna, then that knot can be cut. We heard chidyate hridaya grantish chidjante sarva samshaya. And all one's misgivings then become destroyed by the power of that Katha. And there wouldn't be any topic unless there were two. Because when there's one, you have nothing to say. And therefore, if you're an impersonalist, don't write any books. And also don't say anything, because that's contradictory to your philosophy. And that's really boring. And nobody likes that. And nobody likes to hear when their parents pass on that they were nothing. They just merged. People don't gravitate towards that because it's not true. We have feelings. And we want to express those feelings. We want to invest them somewhere. So the Bhagavatam shows us that everything emanates from this rasa between Radha and Krishna. And there's a dance going on in the spiritual world through which Krishna and the Radharani are the centerpiece. And there everyone is circumambulating and taking their spiritual nourishment from seeing the pastimes of Radha and Krishna, and it expands out into many different kinds of rasas, which are unlimited in their combinations and permutations. And so we're fortunate to have the association of Mahabhagavatas, not the least of which is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who, although he's Krishna himself, comes as a Mahabhagavata devotee with the heart and halo of Srimati Radharani, Krishna with the heart and halo. And therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is mentioned here that he goes out into the human society. Maya mrigam dayitayipsitaman vadavad. Karabhajana Muni says, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu goes and walks down your street on whatever it may be. What street do you all live on? Latham. Okay, Latham Street. He comes down Latham Street, and he's actually here. And he gives ordinary people you're not ordinary, but ordinary or other ordinary people, not you. Of course, you already have the opportunity, but he gives the opportunity to everyone to enter into this rasa between Radha and Krishna, because he's Radha and Krishna combined. He's tasting it himself, and he's distributing it to everybody else. And now we'll take a few reflections about the purport, which is just a classic, poetical rendering by Srila Prabhupada of the philosophy in such a concise way that we could read it again and again.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. When you were talking about the impersonalist, I recently had a conversation with my dad. And he was saying that, Brahman is the highest. That's what, that's what my grandparents used to say, things like that. So I told my dad that you like samosa, you like gulab jamun, I'm feeling bad. If you're in Brahman, it's actually around all the spiritual planets. You just let me know. I will request Krishna. You can jump one day into the, one of the lokas, because you won't get to eat all that. And he didn't know, because he doesn't read Shastra as such. And then he said, he started asking me that, so there is nothing that you can, I said, yes, just you're going to stay there, no service, no. So I was just thinking that Krishna consciousness is such an amazing thing where, you don't have to, you just have to just do everything that you're doing for Krishna's sake. And I also was remembering the shloka of when you said about the lotus feet of Queen Kunti, the queens of Dwaraka. Dhyayam sada paribhavat namabhishtadoham tirthaspadam shiva virinchi nutam sharanyam vrityatmakam pranatapala bhavaptipotam vande mahapurushate charanarvindam. So I was just remembering that I just love this shloka so much. I've heard a lot about the shloka from Radhashtami Prabhu's classes, and I was just remembering that how if he just surrendered Mahaprabhu's lotus feet, and which is actually prayed by Shiva and Brahma and everybody, so you just get all perfection. Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, Tyaktya Sadustija Sarepsita La Raja Lakshmi. Prabhupada pointed this out. He said the hippies, they renounced everything. Because he said, he noticed they came and he said they're sleeping on the footpath. Like the sidewalk, probably called the footpath. And they give up their families. He said, although the wealthy family, they had everything. And they sleep on it, but they couldn't give up sex. So still attached. And so this is, we hear Aruya Krishna Paramharam Tata, the variety, the pull of the material nature is so strong. Daivahiyeshu gunamayi mama maya duratya. Mamevye prapadyante maya metam tarantite. Only one who knows the process of surrender to Krishna can be freed from that natural attraction to the external energy. And that has to come from the Adi Ras. What is the Adi Ras? It's the pastimes between Radha and Krishna, which are all attractive. And once one is able to do that, then actually, so the verse, Tyaktva sadusyaja sarepshita raja lakshmi, means that everybody wants the goddess of fortune. Everybody. But, except, one who has tasted the Adi Ras in the proper channel through the Goswamis. And you look at the Goswamis, Tyaktvaturnam ashesha mandalapati sada shenam sada tuchavat. Tuchavat means like, ooh, we don't want to touch this anymore at all. As we mentioned before, the yogis who are aware of the peril of commingling with the material energy are so sensitive that they don't want to touch any kind of happiness here in the material world. The Hladini samskar is so becomes so deep after one touches material pleasure that it's very hard to get rid of, in case anybody hasn't noticed. And he said they become as sensitive as an eyeball. So just as your eye is so sensitive, the yogis. And however, the bhakta who have tasted the nectar of Radha Krishna, just as Rupa and Sanatan Goswami, as they had met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They were already studying Bhagavatam, but they met Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in him, they felt this rasa. And therefore, Tyaktva Turnam Ashesha. They were the center of everything. They were center of all attention. And they were right in the middle of the most affluent society. They had the goddess of fortune as much as you can have her in your life. They were very wealthy, they're highly learned, everything that you want. This Janmaishvari Shuta Shribir Edamana Madahapuman. And then, because they tasted the happiness of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet, then they were able to give it up. And that's something that even the devas can't do. Nobody can do. Oh, Haribol. Thank you, everyone, for joining us online. Please greet our dear devotees. Haribol. So anyone who takes shelter of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's lotus feet and the process given by the Goswamis of Vrindavan will also notice that he or she becomes impervious, or at first at least aware of the fact that the material world is not so desirable, and that there's an alternative. And we taste it as we come together to chant Hare Krishna. We see the deities. At first, it's not completely clear what it is, but then it becomes more clear, and our determination to follow in the footsteps of the inhabitants of the spiritual world becomes more pronounced as we become more advanced in devotional service. And we also become not only fixed, because we're not harassed by the lower modalities anymore in Nishta, but we also start to get a positive taste and then an attachment that's so great that we don't want to become attached. Well, it's not that we don't want to become attached to anything else, it's that we're not. We're exclusively devoted to Krishna. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, in Srimad Bhagavatam there is a very little reference related to Srimati Radharani. Can you just elaborate why is that? Because every time we say Radhe Krishna, but in whole Srimad Bhagavatam it's pretty less direct reference to Srimati Radharani.
Well, not just Srimati Radharani, any of the Vrajavadus, any of the cowherd gopis of Vrindavan are not mentioned by name in the Srimad Bhagavatam by Shukadeva Goswami, but especially Srimati Radharani. And one of the reasons given is that first of all, it's a very high topic. We talked about this yesterday. And those who are speaking about this are a little reticent unless they're in the right company. It's not meant for everybody. And so they're indirect references to Srimati Radharani. Other sampradayas may say, well, you worship Radha Krishna. After your Goswamis, now you have Radha Krishna everywhere instead of just Krishna. How can you justify that? Very easily. It's very clear in the Srimad Bhagavatam that in the Rasa Lila, the 5 chapters, we find that there is very specific mention, undeniable, that amongst Krishna's associates who came to the forest, there's one who stands out in particular. And she has pleased the Supreme more than anyone else. Although her name's not mentioned specifically, but the word Radha is indicative of which means to worship. So the second reason is that Shukadeva Goswami, knowing that the name of Radha is so sacred and also ecstasy-inducing in those who are experiencing their hearts are already melted by, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mentions in his teachings to Rupa Goswami, a sun ray of the internal potency touches the heart of the practitioner and melts the heart. And at that time, one is experiencing rasa within the heart. The heart is melted, juta chitta. And as we know from the verse, Evam vratasva priyanama kirtya jatanurago jita chuta ucher asatyato rotiti roti gayati unmadavam ritati lokabhayaha. Very advanced devotees who have that condition of madness induced by the heart being melted, sometimes can't help themselves. They'll go into ecstasy, a trance of ecstasy, as we saw from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's great devotee who went into 7 hours of ecstasy, Pundarik Vidyanidhi, just after hearing one verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Aho Bhakiyam Stanakalakut. Knocked everything over, everything smashed. They tried to hold him down, they couldn't. Finally, he went into a trance for 7-8 hours without moving. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did a similar thing when he went to the Jagannath temple. Advanced devotees know this about themselves. Shukadev Goswami also knew that about himself. And he knew that if he mentioned the name of Radha, it was possible, beyond his control, that he would go into a trance of ecstasy. He only had 7 days. And so he was doing his duty. In fact, we find this, the happiness of serving Krishna in the mood of Srimati Radharani, which is what we're doing. We're interested in Radha Dasyam, serving Radharani through the disciplic succession. That is our objective. We're not even into serving Krishna. We serve Radharani. She serves Krishna. And as Prabhupada mentioned in this purport, she's the agency through which we're able to serve. So we know that the highest servitors are interested only in Krishna's pleasure. For instance, Daruka is mentioned in the Nectar of Devotion. And once he was fanning Krishna, and he got into so much ecstasy fanning Krishna that his hands started to tremble. And he couldn't hold the fan. So he was praying, stop this ecstasy. I can't do my service. And so this is the mood of the devotees who are doing service. They don't want happiness from it. It's not why they're doing it. They don't want to taste Ananda. They're not doing it for Shanti, Shanti, Shanti either. This is a big discussion in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita. The yogis, they want to be peace of mind. Om Shanti, Shanti, I feel good now. Devotees reject that. They say, let us be in anxiety always for Krishna. In fact, the gopis, as we know, Krishna got a headache. There's a famous story, and it's been recited by many great acharyas, that he had a headache, and he asked that some of his close associates need to give their foot dust so that he could cure his headache. That was his request. So Narada said, Krishna got a headache. Please give foot dust. He wants it. And everyone's, I can't put my foot dust on Krishna's head. And they rejected. And so Narada came back, and Krishna said, ask the gopis in Vraj. And he told them the situation, and they said, yes, here's the foot dust. He said, but everyone else rejected because they said, we'll go to hell. They said, hell? Who cares? Krishna's got a headache. This is the mood of service that I heaven or hell, it's all the same. Apitulyarta darshina. Well, all I care is that I'm able to serve Krishna. Narayana paraksarvein akutaschana pipyati swarga pavarga narakeshu apitulyarta darshan. Devotees aren't so interested in looking around and seeing like, oh, this is a nice place. I could live here. They're interested only, well, how can I serve Krishna in this situation? So Shukadev Goswami was doing his duty to speak the Bhagavatam, and he didn't want to jeopardize the opportunity to speak And the rest of the Bhagavatam, so he doesn't mention in very specific language. And as we also said yesterday, when we're speaking in terms of the relationship between lover and beloved in the spiritual world, it's very indirect language anyway. It's considered gross or crass to come out and say it. Everything's done poetically and explained in that way. Any other reflections? Yes. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you so much for a very enlivening morning on Radhashtami. I was thinking when we were talking about the purport that I just thought occurred to me that just like impersonalism, when I was in the beginning trying to understand different philosophies, one thing that I read that when I came into Krishna consciousness and I was new, that how when people are really broken in relationships, that's when they are attracted to impersonalism, because they're just so frustrated. They don't want to even understand that there is a relationship in a higher realm or a higher consciousness. So they reject anything that has, or they're more attracted to something more impersonal because it's all shanti, like you said, peace. But on the contrary, Prabhupada just says that Krishna consciousness is dormant in every living entity. And I was thinking that, just had a revelation that, everyone, even in the impersonal Brahman, Krishna consciousness is dormant in them because they are living entities. And sooner or later, they'll probably go back to Godhead.
Sanatana Goswami points out, Briha Bhagavatamrita, that in the Brahmalok, meaning the abode of liberation, where living in some jivas merge into the oneness. Actually, they never merge. They always maintain their individuality, but they temporarily merge according to our contextualization of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But he notes through his character in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita Gopakumar that those living entities are serving also, because he noticed that they sparkle. And therefore they glorify. There's actually a kind of form he describes in the formlessness. And he said that the living entities there are sparkling and glorifying that impersonal form, if you can handle that. And that's their service. And as you're pointing out, no one can get away from that, because that's our eternal constitutional. Jivera Sorupa Hoy, Krishnera Nityadas. It's always there. And it's our tendency to come back to that. And if we don't know who Krishna is and have the opportunity to enter into that Adi Ras, then we'll, by default, eventually come back to the material world. Aruya Krishna Paramparam Tata Patantyato Nadrita Yushmaran Grayaya. It's impossible not to, at some point, come back. Who is next? Yes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. The point you were saying about the anxiety, right? I was thinking that just being in the material world, anxiety naturally comes.
Yeah.
Even in simple things, I feel like I was trying to get some things to our Guru Maharaj, and then FedEx missed the package, and I have to call the driver, track it, get it, and like how Hansapriya was trying to get the dress for the deities, I was just thinking, just being in this world, it's hard to be peaceful even in doing the services. Something doesn't work somewhere. You have to, do everything to get it. I was thinking now there is no sadhu sangha happening. There is no things. There is no big anxiety, big problems. But even in small things, somehow anxiety happens.
But you're there going, Vipara Santita Sasva, Tatar Tatar Jagago. Krishna, please give me more anxiety. I can't. I don't like this Shanti stuff. Yeah, the anxiety, Prabhupada said, is on a morning walk. I put it in my book. One of my godbrothers, Guru Kripa Prabhu, he told me about it first, and I found it in the Veda base. But He said some devotees, they get into a lot of anxiety about going out for book distribution. And Prabhupada said, no, you tell them that's spiritual anxiety. He said, just like Yashoda. Yashoda's always in anxiety. Where's Krishna? Where'd he go? Tie him up. Because that's her mood. She's always in anxiety. When you have a baby, what to speak of, it's Krishna. He's into everything. And always in anxiety. So Prabhupada said, you tell them that's spiritual anxiety. And that's purifying, and that's what's there in the Vraj all the time. Everyone's in anxiety. When's Krishna coming back? And then when they're with him, they're thinking, when's he going to leave? And it's that the emotions there, they're overflowing, but they're transcendental emotions. No shanti. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, regarding anxiety, I think I wanted to share the Sankirtan story. Is it okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so last weekend we went to Art and Wine Festival. After 18 months, festival season is open. So we went there and they had an entry and exit. And there's a ticket and row to get into that. And it's within one parking lot. So immediately when anxious, like how are we going to get inside? So we do outside or set up inside? And we just unload the car. And so much, devotee is asking what to do, and nobody had a perfect answer what to do. And as we walking towards the trolley, and we went to the exit door, and the lady over there, she opened the door immediately. She said, "Oh, you are one of the vendor. Come inside." And we just went inside, we just nodded the head and just went inside, and all of us, without ticket, anything, we just went inside. And after inside, like where to find the spot, because all the stalls are there, all the booth. We walked 2 times. Should we ask to the organizer or not, or what? So then we found like someone didn't show up, and there was an empty spot. And we went there, and the neighbor of that, immediately looked at us, said, "Do you have permit?" And I said, "Oh, we are from yoga center. We are free speech area. So we are using this as a free speech area." And like that, we just, set up a table. And still, I think we are a little nervous about how the neighbor will react and things like that. But in the end, it was really peaceful experience. A lot of people came and stopped by, and really, how the anxiety overall, in the end, you get a lot of joy. So that's one said that.
So nice, Prabhu. Haribol.
So, and I have follow-up questions on and the purport as we read, like Radharani, she arranged the service for everyone, to Krishna. How that looks in spiritual world, like in the material world where we see, like, there is a hierarchy, and if you need to get to, top level, you need to always go through the hierarchy, and to get some assignment done or, report back to that. So how spiritual world that arrangement looks?
In the spiritual world, the hierarchy is not like the pecking order in the material world. In the material world, icha dvesha samutena dvandva mohena bharata. Everyone's envious, and they're all so desirous of being the center. So when we find this hierarchy in the material world, there's always some pinch. It's like, no, you don't. I'm here already. You go away. But in the spiritual world, those who are on the top of the hierarchy's main objective is to bring others up. So Srimati Radharani is always thinking how to bring others closer to Krishna. That's her preoccupation. In fact, in that context, I also wrote about this in the book. It's not an advertisement, by the way. That one of the devotees in 1973 was describing that this is the mood of Sankirtan, because he had heard something like that from Prabhupada. Not everything was available in Vedabase back then, so if somebody heard something, other people would say, "Where'd that come from?" So I heard Prabhupada. Prove it. So somebody wrote to Prabhupada. Nandulal Dasi wrote to him, said, such and such, it was Rameshwar Prabhu, is saying this about Sankirtan, that it's the mood of Radharani always trying to bring everybody else closer. I said, why do we go out? Why do you go to the Art and Wine Festival, for heaven's sake? We got no business there. Actually, we do. We're the main event, but otherwise we wouldn't go there. We'd stay at home and read Bhagavatam together and so forth. But you go out there because you want to bring people closer. you get an ecstasy when you see somebody who all of a sudden turns towards Krishna. And so this was what the devotee was saying is the mood of the gopis. And that was Lord Chaitanya's prerogative in coming. And so they presented it to Prabhupada. Nandulal presented it to Prabhupada on basis of representing other devotees who were concerned about this presentation. And Prabhupada said, yes, this is the correct understanding. This is the mood of the gopis. So in this hierarchy, you find, of course, mercy always flows down. So you have to have a hierarchy. You know, oftentimes people come in a room, and there's some people more talented, some people less, some smarter, some not. But the person who's maybe not as smart, they'll just say, all right, we'll all be equal here. Because that works for them. It's like, we'll be all the same. But we're not. There are people who become self-effulgent. And there are some that, their talent just comes out and everyone goes, wow, look at that. And so in the spiritual world, everyone's always elevating such exhibitions of devotional service or talent for Krishna and then putting them on a higher level. And also, people recognize, they admire those who are doing more service than they are. And when one does that, then one actually is able to experience the benefit of that person's devotional service. When you appreciate the devotional service of others, then you get the result yourself. And if you're envious, you don't get anything. Just a bunch of anxiety. Why is that person better than me? And I wish they would trip and fall right now while they're dancing, because they're dancing too nicely. And I hope they fail. I mean, we heard it in Amara Jivana. This is the mood of, the lamentable mood of a conditioned soul. It's like, oh, God, when somebody's excelling, I feel terrible right now. And when they fail, although externally I'm like, well, I'm thinking, oh, great, now I look better. So it's the opposite in the spiritual world. And so the hierarchy is sweet because those on top are trying to elevate others. Meanwhile, those who are lower are admiring those above them. Isn't it nice when there's somebody who's, advanced and you're able to just admire them? There's no pinch where you're thinking like, who died and made them God? Yeah. Thanks, Bhakti, he got it. And that's the rule of the material world, right? So the spiritual world's not like that. It's all sweet because there's pure-heartedness there, and everyone appreciates the other. Yes, Prabhu.
Correct.
We heard something. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Two things. One was the Art and Wine Festival that Halder Prabhu was speaking about. So I went into that festival after 2 hours and I was wondering how they crossed that barricade.
The Viraja.
With books and trolley, now I came to know. So that was first thing. Second thing, you were mentioning about how the topic of Radhashtami, Srimati Radharani is very esoteric, and I was remembering a class by Srila Prabhupada on Radhashtami. And in the entire class, he was speaking on Krishna and glorifying Krishna and speaking about Krishna's pastimes. And at the end, he said that Krishna is very attracted to Srimati Radharani. Imagine how glorious is Srimati Radharani. And then he stopped the class. So I was just remembering that class. Thank you, Prabhu.
So nice. So nice. Yeah, and this is, everyone's attracted to Krishna. He's all attractive. But who's Krishna attracted by? Everyone wants, we know from, what is it? Prayena Dev, no. Sri Brahma Samhita, yad bhava bhavitadiyo manudastataiva samprapya rupa mahima shanayana bhusha suktaryameva nigama pratitaistuvanti govindamadi purush. They're all doing Brusha Shukta, everything's like Krishna, God, please give me a little something. And so everyone who knows anything, we're not talking about people who are bewildered by the material energy, although the transcendentalists are all looking to Krishna. Who's Krishna looking towards? Where does he get? To Radharani. That's where he's preoccupied. So the smartest transcendentalists, they know this secret, and therefore they worship Srimati Radharani to please Krishna. 1, 2.
Hare Krishna.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
Please accept my humble obeisances. Can I share my reflection, Guru Maharaj?
We would appreciate it, Dhanavari. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you. So, when Prabhu just shared the book distribution story, and I just want to share a short one. When you just mentioned that other advanced devotee, we appreciate so much. And so we both, my friend and I went, and she's so advanced, and she knows Spanish language. So we both went to the borders of San Diego, close to the border of San Diego, with books. And we both had, I told her that I don't know so much Spanish and you talk. So as soon as we had a game plan that I'll stop and you start talking. And then, so I was appreciating the advanced devotee who has talent and, purity and so much. And because of that and your mercy, we did distributed. We have distributed so many books to Spanish-speaking people. So I was just thinking her advancement and the purity. And thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Haribol. Just a disclaimer, we're not staying here all day. In case anybody's wondering, at any minute, I'll stop. Prabhu, who had it? Yes, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for a wonderful class this morning. I follow up on Haldaru Prabhu's point that so many times when I, for example, do book distribution, I don't necessarily feel compassion for the other person. I may necessarily do it just to please the spiritual master. And there's no, because I sometimes wonder that intentions are not aligned properly. So how do we genuinely feel for others, when you are doing something? But because otherwise it's just doing for, of course there's a desire to please spiritual master, but apart from it, I don't see anything.
Yasya prasada bhagavat prasado, yasya prasada nagati kutopi. This is the essence of spiritual life. If you have a desire to please the spiritual master. Yasya devi para bhaktir yata devi tatagarao tasyaite katitahyarta prakashanti mahatmanaha. Vyavasayatmika buddhireke ha kuranandana. Bahushaka hirantascha buddhayo vyavasayinam. So Prabhupada heard this verse and read the commentary and said, yes, this is my mission statement. Eke ha kurunandana. I'll fix my attention on serving my spiritual master. That's what he did, exclusively. So it's like, okay, well, I don't have compassion, I don't have this, I don't have that. Everything comes from that. When you are able to do that, then naturally, as the verse, Yasya Devi Parabhaktir, if you have implicit faith in Guru and Krishna simultaneously, then the import of all the Vedic literature becomes known to such a person and arises in their heart. And so this exclusively fixing one's mind on the order of the Guru is the Bhagavatam's prescription. As an example, Bhayam dvitiya binibeshatasya ishad apetasya viparyayo smritihi tanmayato buddha abhajetam bhaktyayika yesham guru devatatma. Bhaktyayika yesham. One should be one-pointed and see one's service to the Guru as the means for turning around one's entire material existence. So you're in a good position. And by doing that kind of service, then naturally, it's service through the parampara to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, And we know yata yata gora padara vinde, as mentioned by Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur, that when you serve the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu through the disciplic succession, then naturally the compassionate nature of Srimati Radharani will awaken within your heart, and the mood of serving her and Krishna naturally arises within the heart. And it doesn't hurt to associate with devotees who already have that. Did you hear Maharaj's class yesterday? Srila Radhanath Maharaj? Go back and listen to it. If you listen to that, just sit and listen to that whole class and just watch how he delivers it. And if compassion doesn't arise within your heart after that, then you just keep listening to it. You know, it's very powerful to hear from advanced devotees.
Prabhu, I like the point that you shared, how in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, you came and you appreciated Bhagavad Gita. And then as you are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, slowly you started getting to know the personal conception of the Supreme Absolute Truth. I was just thinking about all the sets that we have distributed to so many impersonalists or people who had no clue. But once you said that, I'm thinking so much of hope for all of them that one day, if they just read Bhagavatam, then they will be able to realize the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Yeah, although we say the living entity, certain living entities have no clue because their realization has been obfuscated by the material nature. Living entities are smart. They're part and parcel of Krishna. And they can be reawakened easily, actually. Maya Mugdha Jiva Nahi Swata Krishna Gyan. And so it's rightly done that we meddle in the affairs of people who are mindlessly going on in their ways in the material world, and we intervene. We go in and say, hey, yeah, this is my spot over here. And we set up, and we go here, there, and everywhere. That's our duty. Because living entities can very easily wake up when they hear the right vibration. It's so powerful. So you can never count anybody out. And just recently, a god sister of mine who had left Krishna consciousness for a long time, and she just became totally inimical towards Krishna consciousness, towards everything related to Krishna consciousness. And we were just like, a few devotees who knew her sort of stayed in touch, but everyone knew, it was like, don't bring it up, because you'll just get vitriol. And then just recently, the last month, I went back in. I'm chanting again. I regret it. Just give me everything, allow me back in. So this trying to stay in the material world is very artificial. It's a lot of hard work. It's hard work trying to maintain the status quo in the material world because we don't belong here. Everything breaks. iPhones break. The pump doesn't work because the vandal stole the handle. It's a lyric from a song. Everything is topsy-turvy here in the material world, and it's really hard to be a material body because it just doesn't work the way we want it to work. Nothing does. Everything falls down because of gravity, wears out, leaks, whatever it is. It's a big problem trying to maintain the status quo in the material world. But it's not a problem maintaining status quo as a living entity. It's much easier. In fact, it's no problem at all, because if you just be a servant of Krishna, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Jiv Krishna das e bishwas, korleto or dukho nai. You won't have any misery if you just be who you are. Who am I? You're a servant of Krishna. And just follow the mood of Srimati Radharani, that I'm the most humble, unqualified person, but I'm going to serve in all circumstances, no matter what, even if you're not present before me. And I'll go on serving you, loving you. And anyone who adopts that attitude, or even a molecule of that attitude in his or her life, for instance, if you're chanting japa, And all of a sudden you have that feeling come into your heart that I'm an insignificant beggar, I'm the lowest person, and Krishna, could you allow me one time to taste real sincerity? And you won't want to move. You want to just keep chanting and chanting and chanting and not stop. And that's the nectar of the spiritual world, that even one atom of that feeling of humility and in service, following the footsteps of Srimati Radharani, is so satisfying. What to speak if you make it your whole life and soul, and that's what your body's made out of. So that's what a spiritual body is. It's all 100% impetus to humbly serve Krishna with no expectation of return. Expectation of return, you need a gross material body to clunk around here in the material world and try to touch everything and enjoy it for yourself. We'll just take 2 more and then everyone has to go to work, I think. Or maybe we canceled everything. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Is everyone okay? Yes. Okay.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the nice class. I have a question about Srimad Bhagavatam from the Nectar of Devotion. So is it okay if we read that part?
Sure.
It's chapter 13, 5th paragraph. Nectar of Devotion, chapter 13, paragraph 5th.
Like 5 more minutes.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare
Well,
Krishna.
she's getting that ready. I was just going to say that you talked about anxiety.
Yes?
And Malini we were talking about 10 days ago that, she was very anxious that, 2000 Bhagavatams. Just listening to her, I also got anxious. And then I started thinking, oh my God, how we never want to break, we never want to not achieve something. So I got such a terrible headache because usually stress puts me. Then I was just listening to you now and I was just thinking that in anxiety in the spiritual world, well, you don't have misery, so you won't even get a headache. You will still be anxious to achieve things for
So a
Krishna.
lot of devotees don't want to leave the material world. The idea, na dhanam, na janam, na kavitam, and it includes, I don't want liberation because I want to be here in this, working in Lord Chaitanya's movement. You can do that. There's no difference, but there is a little difference because there's this a little more anxiety here in the material world of what might happen next. Anyway, we're in the best position you can be in. We have service in Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement here in the material world right now. And we're not even sure we want to go back to Godhead, right? Because how are we going to do more Bhagavatams? But taking on more and more anxiety is the way that we open up our faith more and more, because ever since the very beginning here in ISV, when we made what we thought was a big goal, I think it was 100 books or something. And I remember the Sankirtan leader at the time came to me and said, we've been talking, this is, let's be realistic. Right? But that was the first milestone. We went for it anyway. And then we keep doing that. It's all insignificant in the face of the vastness of what we can do. But every time that we face that anxiety, it opens up for us more faith that Lord Chaitanya is doing it. Bali Mardan Prabhu said that to me in the parking lot yesterday. Now we know we can do anything, but we say that every time and then we move it up and it seems impossible again, right?
Thank you.
Yes.
Guru Maharaj, one of the motivations to read Srimad Bhagavatam is that we know it's one of the 5 most potent forms of devotional service. But in this chapter of Nectar of Devotion, which describes the 5 most potent forms, it mentions in this paragraph how unless someone has completely given up all kind of fruitive activities and situated in pure devotional service, if you see the last line, one must be situated in pure devotional service before he can relish Srimad Bhagavatam as it is. So I was thinking from myself that I'm way away from pure devotional service, and that is the reason I don't relish Srimad Bhagavatam. So how can I encourage myself to relish and also others?
Well, it's written in 12 cantos, and the first 2 cantos are the lotus feet of Krishna. So we approach Krishna through worshiping his lotus feet, and then we gradually go upward so we can come to the 10th canto and appreciate his smiling face. So Prabhupada mentions there's a progression, a progressive way that we go through the Bhagavatam through each canto until we come to the 10th canto. And as you know well, but one will find that by reading the first 9 cantos, one is divested of the desire to engage in material sense gratification by the time you get to the 9th canto. And if you're not, Prabhupada says, by the time you get there, then start over again. In fact, you can stay in the first couple of cantos for a while. We heard yesterday from Maharaj about how when Gadadhar Pandit and Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu were studying Bhagavatam together, can you imagine sitting in on that? And they would go over Dhruva Maharaj and Prahlad Maharaj 100 times each pastime. Even Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, you read these pastimes 100 times each. And I get to recount this tiny little experience I have at Govardhan when we go there for the month and we camp out. And the only purpose for eating, getting up in the morning, doing everything is to meet for our Bhagavatam hearing sessions. It's about 5 hours, 6 hours a day, straight hearing. And we went through the 4th canto, I remember, and afterwards, when devotees are congregating in the hallway of the ashram, there's a sort of transcendental look they have, like, wow, what did we just do? It's just sitting in there. It's like getting exposed to radiation. You got radiated. It's like you're finished. If you get too much radiation, it can cause all kinds of physical problems. So the spiritual radiations are. So one of the brahmacharis, we were in Keshavarti Maharaj's room, it's his disciple, and he had this look in his eye, and so we said, well, what's the matter? And he goes, what was I thinking? What he meant was it was a retrospective on his whole material life and trying to enjoy the material world, but it was like he was divested of that. Everything had been turned around by sitting and hearing. So it's true. If you hear the Bhagavatam, it exposes every psychological condition of the living entity. And so one may say, some of these stories seem a little odd. It's like, well, you're a little odd, sir. I mean, just notice how you move in the world and what you're thinking all the time. Like, you wanted to enjoy that? Do you know what it is? You don't even know what it is, and you're trying to enjoy it, right? And the Bhagavatam comes out and says, no, here's what it is. Nobody else is doing that. Everyone's covering it over. If you drive down the 101 freeway, everyone's got these signs up. It's like, it's great. It's not great. Bhagavatam says it's not great. And it's like, that's really harsh. You shouldn't say that to people. It's like, well, then stay in the material world and read the signboards and go on the internet and try to, consume more stuff. It won't work. It doesn't work. It never has. So Bhagavatam comes out and teaches us that all the way from the beginning in such amazing ways. I mean, look at Parikshit Maharaj when he's interacting with Dharma, the bull, and then, Dharma has been beaten by the bull, and Parikshit Maharaj comes and asks you, who did this? And he wouldn't name a perpetrator. Who does that? A person who understands consequence and how in karma, if you complain, you become part of the problem. And that's a very subtle thinking. Not many people think like that. That's in the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, extricating us from our involvement in the material world in the most precise way, surgically. So by the time you get to 9 cantos, and it covers everything, there's human slavery in the 9th canto. Did you know that? Have you noticed that? Yeah. There's also, how Sadhumna, he goes into the forest with Lord Shiva and Uma are there, and they're just riding through with this retinue, and Uma says, I don't like these people in here disturbing our atmosphere, so anybody else comes in here, they'll turn into a woman. So Sudumna came in, and all his associates, including he himself and the horses himself, turned into mares, and everyone was changed to a woman. It's like, what happened? And they found out about Lord Shiva, and there was a little negotiation. It's like, okay, well, I can lessen it. You can change back to a man every month. We'll just alternate. Is that a current topic? Absolutely. It's, because the material body is superfluous, man, woman, whatever. In fact, there was somebody who was transgender in the movement around Prabhupada's time. There's probably more than just one person, but Prabhupada just said, well, pick one and then just be steady. So, these things are addressed in the Bhagavatam. Where else are you going to hear a commonsensical perspective of how the material world works and what's important and what's not important? It's all in the Bhagavatam. So you develop a taste by hearing, and you also develop a keen intelligence of how to move in the material world without getting wrecked, like everybody else is getting wrecked, when you know how everything works and where it comes from. Okay, we have just two more and then we're done. I have a feeling, because it's Monday and you have to come back, right?
I had a question also in the Bhagavatam. So in the 12th canto, which I haven't fully read it. I'm still going with my Bhakti Vaibhav schedule, so I'm on the 6th canto. But we learned the verse, Nimna Ganam Yatha Ganga. And then I went and referred where that verse was from. That Bhagavatam is the ultimate scriptures, and Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu. So I was curious that, when we have already the 10th canto covered and then the 12th canto, why is it that Shiva is glorified as Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu when we can say gopis are the ultimate Vaishnavas, right? So is that because there are aspects to the Bhagavatam which are more like, just like Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada says, the bhakti, the middle six chapters are the bhakti, and they are sandwiched between those in the first six, which are, more on the karma, and the karma yoga, and the last six, which are more jnana yoga. But bhakti is kind of, the confidential aspect is inside. So is Bhagavatam also something like that?
Well, when we talk about superlatives, remember we discussed yesterday, there's what did I say? Not good, better. It's perfect, more perfect, and most perfect. There's unlimited variety in perfection. So you can understand in that way, when you get some superlatives and he's like, well, there's something that says it's better. It's like, yeah, it's the best, but it's better than the best. That can happen in the variety of the spiritual world. It does happen. So that's what happens in that context. There are other more subtle things about that, but that's the main point. Yes, Prabhu? Is everyone okay? Okay.
So the purport which we read.
What?
The purport. Which
you have to point that towards your.
Yeah, the purport which we read at the start of the.
Turn it there.
Yeah. Thank you. So the purport which we read at the start of the class, we serve to Krishna through Radharani, and then what Achyuta Chaitanya Prabhu was referring to Maharaj's lecture. Maharaj glorified Krishna in all aspects, and then he said it's to her Krishna is attracted. So I felt, so isn't this Radhashtami the only chance for us to join Krishna, if at all, and celebrate, to join Krishna and celebrate Radhashtami, which means actually through Radha again we are going to serve Krishna. So.
No, it's not the only chance.
Does that make...
No, you're saying, is Radhashtami the only chance to worship Srimati Radharani directly? To serve, to please Krishna?
So this is my thought. I'm asking a question. So isn't Radhashtami the only chance where we can join Krishna to celebrate Radharani's appearance day. Is it celebrated that way? That should that be the mood because Krishna is attracted towards Radharani?
Yes, but it's not the only opportunity. Okay. Every time you say Hare Krishna, you're putting Radharani first. She's always there first, except in Kishore Kishori. And then the devotees ask Prabhupada, it's like, usually it's Rukmini Dwarkadish or Radha Madan Mohan. So why, Prabhupada? And he said, save the best for last. That's the mood of the Gaudiya Sampradaya. Krishna is not that attractive when Radharani's not there. It's like, where's Radharani? So every day is basically Radhashtami in Vrindavan, in the mood. That's why, as Prabhupada says in the purport, everyone's always calling out Radhe Radhe, because like they know the channel, and they worship Radharani. So, thank you, everybody. It's a memorable day today. It's very special coming in on this Monday. These are interesting festival times. While the rest of the world's moving about, it'll seem odd when we go back out again. It's like, where's everybody going? But in any case, thank you very much, and hopefully we'll see you again tonight at 5 o'clock in a couple hours. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpadrivishcha kripasindabevacha patitanam pavanibhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Special thanks to Tulsi and her family for visiting us here for Radhashtami. Haribol. And a most beautiful Jai Radha Madhava this morning. Hare Krishna.